As in Hebrew, there are a number of unusual or irregular roots, and these are ones that have some kind of weak consonant. So in this video, we will look at those that have a final he and ones that have either a vav or a yod as the second consonant, called hollow verbs. Now in terms of Lamed-He verbs, these are actually a mixture of three classes of verbs in Biblical Aramaic. Those with an original final consonant of either aleph, vav, or yod, but in the lexicon all occur as final he, but they were not originally final he. Now there is no longer any trace of final vav in Biblical Aramaic, but you do see indications of that original final aleph or final yod. In John's chapter 14, there is a description of the history of the development of these kinds of roots. In hollow verbs, the word hollow indicates that the middle consonant is weak, but only when it is a vav or a yod. In Biblical Aramaic, the middle consonant almost always is regarded as a long vowel. It doesn't occur as a consonant. Now, just you have to be careful that there are some verbs, some roots like hava, that are not considered hollow because the middle vav is acting as a regular consonant, not a vowel. Now, in both Hebrew and Aramaic, there is some confusion between which words are middle vav or middle yod. So the words in which middle vav predominates in the imperfect are considered middle vav, whereas those in which yod predominates are considered middle yod. And there's more on this in John's chapter 12. Let's look at the paradigms of the Lamed-He verbs. I don't want to look at these in detail, but merely to point out certain features. Now, we mentioned that the original vowel, the original consonant on the root, would not have been a he, but either a yod, vav, or aleph in the Lamed-He verbs in general. Now, the original of this particular root, bana, would have been a beit nun yod, and we see this in ancient Ugaritic, we see this in Phoenician. And that yod shows up in many cases in front of the suffix or sufformative indicating the perfect. So for example, in the D or pa'el, you can see that final consonant showing up all the way down. The same here in the hafel. It's a little bit more mixed in the pa'al or G stem in that you have bana, you have the yod showing up in some of the forms. But notice the third masculine plural, bano. Again, a lot more detail can be found in John's. Now, in the imperfect, it gets kind of confusing because you see all of these alephs all over the place. But these alephs are actually only acting as a final vowel. materlecciones. They are not representing the final consonant of the original root. But that final olive is quite prevalent in the imperfect. Notice the various forms of the infinitive. Mivne for the G, banaya for the pa'el, and havnaya for the hafel. The feminine singular does not actually occur in Biblical Aramaic. That's why I've crossed these out. But notice the various forms, beni or beno. The imperative of the D actually looks very similar. All that has really changed is the doubling of the nun and the vowel underneath the bait. And notice the various forms of the participle. The bane in the G for the masculine singular, but otherwise, again, that original final yod showing up in the other gender and numbers. It's just in the masculine singular that you have a little bit of irregularity. Let's just take a little bit of time to look at the paradigm of the hollow verbs. Notice that in the G or pa'al, the middle consonant is lost altogether. This is same as in Hebrew. And you have a characteristic A vowel for both middle yod and middle vav verbs. The hafel, of course, is going to have the hirik yod, no matter what kind of original middle you would have had in the root. There is no D or pa'el stem, and this is the same in Hebrew. Take a look at the imperfect. Now here's where the original middle consonant, which actually acts as a long vowel, shows up. So yakum as opposed to yasim. And this is the same as in Hebrew. But again, in the hafel, the long I or E vowel, came or kim, is the same for both kinds of original middles. And then note the various forms of the infinitive. It is identical for both in the pa'al and in the infinitive of the hafel. Notice that you again lose that middle consonant, which has now become a vowel. The imperative acts more like the imperfect. So you have either a shork or a hirik yod in the G or pa'al. The hafel, everything gets a middle hirik yod. The participles are a little different in the active of, say, a middle vav root, as in kum. Okay, notice that the middle consonant shows up with a shva, kayama. Whereas with sim in the passive, there is a hirik yod throughout.